Listen well, because this is not just a story, this is a warning that has been walking from generation to generation. In the old days, before roads cut through forest, before guns spoke louder than drums, there lived a people called Inde, and in Inde, power did not come easy. It always asked questions first, and if you answered wrongly, it waited, then it collected. This is the story of Ayong Kita. Ayong Kita, chief of the Inde people, was a man whose name carried weight across the grasslands. Long before he spoke, men listened. Long before he arrived, paths were cleared. His arrows never missed their mark, not because his hands were steady, but because the forest itself seemed to guide him. Animals froze when he drew his bow. Winds bent away from his shots. Elders said the spirit of the land knew Ayong Kita and chose not to stand in his way, yet even a man favored by the forest could not escape. On a night heavy with heat and restless insects, Ayong Kita's wife went into labor. The moon hung low, red and swollen, as though watching with one eye. Women gathered, chants were whispered, herbs were burned, but before the child's first cry could fully settle into the world, death moved quietly through the hut. By dawn, the woman lay still, her warmth gone, her work unfinished. Ayong Kita did not scream. He did not strike the ground. He sat with the child in his arms, staring at the lifeless body of the woman he had loved since youth. When the sun rose, it found a chief holding both grief and life in the same breath. He named the boy Ayong Kita, a name that meant the one who walks between. A child born with life on one side and death on the other. From that day, Ayong Kita raised his son alone. He carried love and grief like twin shadows, one never walking without the other. At night, when the child cried, Ayong Kita rocked him with hands that had once killed leopards. When Ayong slept, the chief stared into the dark, wondering what unseen price had been paid for the boy's survival. Among the Inde, it was believed that a child must know the forest before he could know the world. Ayong Kita followed this law with devotion. Before Ayong's hands were strong enough to draw a full bow, his father carved a smaller one from soft wood. He shaped it carefully, whispering no prayer, making no charm, only watching the grain of the wood, listening to how it wanted to bend. They hunted together through tall grass and thorny paths where no gun had ever thundered. The forest was old then, and it remembered everything. Ayong Kita taught his son the language of footprints, the meaning of broken leaves, the warning hidden in silence. Ayong learned patience before strength, stillness before speed, hunger before reward. By the age of 8, the boy could strike lizards from tree trunks and birds from the sky. His eyes followed movement others missed. He sensed things before they happened, an animal's turn, a rustle too quiet to hear. The elders began to whisper. They said the boy's eyes were too sharp for his age. They said the forest was teaching him secrets meant for grown men, and the forest, listening, said nothing. And somewhere beyond sight, something ancient had noticed that a child born from death was learning its language far too well. When Ayong turned 10, the forest claimed his father as it had claimed his mother. Ayong Kita collapsed during a hunt, his breath leaving him among the same grasses that had fed his life. The boy returned alone, carrying silence instead of meat. By custom, Ayong became the head of his father's household, master even over the slaves who once obeyed Ayong Kita. Though his voice was still thin, authority rested on his shoulders, and resentment grew like rot in hidden places. At night, Ayong heard whispers that stopped when he turned his head. He saw eyes watching him from corners where lamps did not reach. Fear finally sharpened into certainty when he overheard plans of his death. Before dawn could betray him, Ayong fled into the bush with nothing but his bow. For days he wandered, surviving on palm nuts, roasted squirrels, and birds caught with trembling hands. Hunger bent his body, loneliness bent his spirit, and the forest watched him as both child and prey. One night, Ayong slept inside the hollow of an ancient tree, rain dripping through its broken crown. In his dream, his father stood before him, silent but firm, pointing toward a place the boy did not recognize. Ayong Kita's eyes burned with urgency, yet Ayong woke too afraid to act on the vision. Days later, thirst drove him to a lake whose surface was calm and inviting. As he knelt to drink, a sharp hissing voice rose from the water, warning him to turn away. Terror seized him, and he fled, leaving his throat burning with thirst. The following morning, he met the old woman with the long hair, her presence bending the air around her. Though fear clawed at his chest, her voice was gentle. She revealed she had warned him at the lake, for the water was poisoned with bad juju meant to kill wanderers. Leading him to a stream, she pulled out a small stone that shone without reflecting light. She told Ayong to return to the place his father had shown him in the dream and dig. What is buried there, she said, will change the weight of your name, but it will also test your heart. Ayong obeyed without hesitation. At the spot from his dream, his hand struck earth until metal rang beneath the soil. The treasure he uncovered was beyond his understanding. As instructed, he bought 2 strong slaves and built a house deep in the forest, far from jealous eyes. The old woman commanded him to place the stone within the house, warning him never to boast of its power. From that day, whatever Ayong wished for came to him: wealth, slaves, allies, and influence. Years passed, and Ayong's name grew heavy across the land. He allied with the arrow men, traded lives for power, and raised a great town from the forest floor. Comfort wrapped him like fine cloth, but desire whispered louder than satisfaction. 10 years later, the old woman came again in a dream, her voice urgent. She commanded him to return the stone to the stream. Ayong refused in his heart. Wealth was no longer enough. He wanted dominion over his father's land, over all of it. Ayong gathered his warriors and his most loyal men bound to him by fear, blood, and promise. With charms on their bodies and silence in their mouths, they marched toward his father's land. Before they set out, Ayong demanded proof of loyalty. Those accused of witchcraft were forced to swallow the Ezra bean, its poison unforgiving. None survived. Their deaths were declared judgment, and their bodies were left behind as warning. With fear clearing his path, Ayong advanced and seized his father's land. Whoever stood in his way was cut down. The land fell quickly, but the victory did not last. At night, Ayong's body weakened, his blood drained by unseen mouths. The witches he had killed returned as spirits, feeding on him in darkness. The juju men revealed the truth and dug up the witches' bodies, finding them untouched by decay. One by one, they were burned, their spirits screaming back into silence. Ayong recovered and ruled the land at last. Yet the stain of blood remained. From that time onward, the people of Inde accepted the Ezra bean as law: vomit and life, or die and be named guilty. And so the story is told: power gained without restraint will always demand payment, even if it waits many years to collect. Ayong Kita rode in with a steady hand, but peace never truly sat beside him. Though his body had healed, his sleep grew thin and restless. At night, he heard footsteps where no feet walked and voices calling his name from the edges of dreams. The burned witches were gone, yet something deeper had been disturbed. Elders noticed that children born during Ayong's reign cried longer than usual, and hunters returned empty-handed more often than before. The land itself seemed uneasy, as though it remembered the stone that had once bent reality to one man's will. Ayong dismissed these signs, believing power, once seized, could never turn against its owner. But the forest does not forget its debts. One season, the rains delayed without reason. Streams shrank, crops withered, and the people murmured quietly. Then one night, the old woman with the long hair appeared again, not in a dream, but standing at the edge of Ayong's great compound, unseen by guards. Her voice carried the weight of rivers and graves. She told Ayong the stone had never belonged to him, nor even to his father, but to the land itself. By refusing to return it, he had tied his fate to something older than kingship. You took what feeds the world, she said, and the world has begun to hunger. Ayong summoned juju men once more, but this time their chants were unsure, their cowries silent. No sacrifice eased the drought, no charm calmed the air. The people began to fear not witches, but their king. Whispers spread that Ayong's rise had been fed by blood and hidden forces. Some said the spirits he burned had only been messengers, not the true owners of the curse. Others claimed the stone still pours beneath his forest house, calling things without names back into the world. Authority remained in Ayong's hands, but loyalty thinned like smoke. One evening, as Ayong walked alone, he felt the earth tremble beneath his feet, not violently, but like a slow breath being drawn. In that moment, he understood the truth too late. Power taken without balance always returns, not to bargain, but to claim. Ayong Kita could no longer ignore the unease that gripped the land. The forest whispered in voices that had no mouths, streams trembled, and the stone beneath his house paused as though alive. At night, Ayong awoke to shadows calling around him, cold and heavy. The juju men no longer spoke with certainty, their chants failing to soothe the earth's disquiet. Even his most loyal slaves avoided his gaze, and the wind itself seemed to question his authority. The magical stone, once a tool of boundless power, now felt like a tether to forces older and darker than his ambition. One dawn, the old woman with long flowing grey-black hair appeared at the edge of his compound, unseen by anyone but Ayong. Her pale eyes glowed with judgment and sorrow. "The land takes what is owed," she said, "and your greed has tipped the balance." Ayong felt fear, shame, and anger collide within him. Yet, for the first time in years, he questioned the cost of the empire he had built. The forest waited, patient and eternal, as if to see whether a man of power could understand that balance must come before dominion. After a night of restless thought, Ayong acted. He gathered the stone, now warm in his hands, and walked silently to the stream the old woman had indicated years ago. The forest seemed to breathe around him, watching. He knelt and lowered the stone into the flowing water. For a moment, the world held its breath. The earth trembled once more, but this time gently, like a sigh of relief. The streams grew clearer, the crops seemed to lift toward the sun, and birds returned to sing in the trees. The curse that had plagued his land began to lift. As Ayong rose, he felt the presence of those he had wronged, ghostly figures of the witches he had condemned, spirits that once haunted his nights now drifting peacefully toward the horizon. He realized that the stone's magic had always been a test, not just of courage or skill, but of humility and restraint. Ayong returned to his compound a changed man. The slaves he once ruled with fear now saw a leader tempered by understanding. The juju men, silent and watchful, nodded in approval. In itself seemed to breathe again, as though a long-held grievance had finally been reconciled. Ayong Kita ruled the land with wisdom rather than fear. He still possessed great wealth and influence, but he learned to temper ambition with justice, and power with humility. The people no longer whispered of blood or hidden forces but spoke of a king who had faced both supernatural wrath and his own failings. And so, the story of Ayong Kita became a cautionary tale whispered from generation to generation, that unchecked ambition can summon forces beyond comprehension, and only humility and understanding can restore harmony.